Today's topic is prepositions used with the dative case. You are probably still relatively unfamiliar with the dative case, so let's do a quick review of the cases you are more familiar with so that you have some context for the dative case. First of all, as you are well aware, German nouns can be divided into four categories: masculine, feminine, neuter, and plural. Furthermore, each of these types of noun can fulfill different grammatical roles, which are usually known as cases. And a noun could therefore be used in either the nominative, accusative, or dative case. There's actually a fourth case called the genitive, but that's a topic for another day. The nominative case is for subjects of sentences. The accusative case is used for direct objects and after certain prepositions like für, and the dative case is used for indirect objects, also a topic for another day, and certain other prepositions, which we'll be getting to in just a minute. As you know, masculine nouns in the nominative case will use the definite article der. Feminine nouns will use die, neuter nouns will use das, plural nouns will use die. The accusative case is the same, with the exception of the masculine nouns. Masculine nouns in the accusative case use the definite article den. The dative case is very different, though. Dem for masculine, der for feminine, dem again for neuter, and den for plural. This is the case we're interested in for the prepositions we'll be discussing. There are 8 prepositions that always take the dative case. In other words, nouns used with these prepositions will be in the dative case. These prepositions are aus, außer, bei, mit, nach, seit, von, and zu. A hint to learning these is to sing them in that order to the tune of the Blue Danube Waltz. Aus, außer, bei, mit, nach, seit, von, zu, and so on. You have seen some of these before, though you may not have realized you were using a dative preposition. For instance, you might have seen someone say, Ich komme aus der Schweiz, or Ich komme aus der Türkei. Both der because they're feminine nouns after the dative preposition aus. Or you might have heard someone tell you, Ich komme mit dem Bus zur Schule, or mit der U-Bahn, or mit dem Auto. Or you might have used the phrases nach der Pause, and nach der Schule, or maybe even nach dem Mittagessen. Der on the first two because of the feminine dative, and dem because of neuter dative. Today, we're especially interested in 2 new dative prepositions that you will need to discuss locations in a town or city, von and zu. So let's start with zu. You will often use this when asking for directions, because you'd want to say something like, how do I get to the post office, or the train station, or the bank, or wherever you want to go. With the various genders in the dative case, our options should be zu dem, zu der, zu dem, and zu den. However, zu dem is always contracted to zum, as in, wie komme ich bitte zum Bahnhof? Keep in mind that zum is only one word, but in English it would be 2 words, to the. Similarly, zu der is contracted and becomes zur, as in, wissen Sie, wie ich zur Bank komme? The neuter form is also contracted to zum, ich muss zum Hotel gehen. And the plural form is the only one of these that is not contracted. It remains zu den. For example, ich will heute Abend zu den Konzerten gehen. I want to go to the concerts, plural, this evening. Now let's discuss the preposition von, which can mean either from or of, depending on how you're using it. This is useful if you are asking for directions from one place to another. Our 4 options should be, because we're using this with dative case, von dem, von der, von dem, and von den. But there will be a couple contractions again. Von dem contracts to vom, as in, wie komme ich vom Bahnhof zur Post, where Bahnhof is your masculine noun. Von der does not have a contracted form, So you would have to say both words, as in Wie kommt man von der Post zum Café? The neuter form of von dem is also contracted to vom, as in Wie fahre ich vom Hotel zum Kino? And finally, von den remains von den, no contraction here. So you could say something like Wie kommt man von den Schmidts zu den Baumanns? And notice we're using someone's last name there to indicate their house. There are a couple other prepositions that are often, but not always, used with the dative case. Now, they weren't on that list of 8 earlier that we sang, because they aren't always used with the dative case, only sometimes. The prepositions in and an are frequently used with the dative case, but only when they are showing no change of location relative to the place in question. You might remember this from phrases like in die Stadt in the accusative case, which means to the city, but in der Stadt in the dative case, which means in the city. If you were saying you want to go to somewhere using in or an, you'd have to use the accusative case. But here we'll be saying where something is using in or an, so we have to use the dative case instead. Here's how this might look. In dem would become im, in der stays the same, in dem will again contract to im, and in den stays the same. So with masculine nouns you could say something like Ich kaufe Tomaten im Obst- und Gemüseladen. I buy tomatoes in the fruit and vegetable store. Wir waren gestern in der Stadt. We were in the city yesterday. Ich habe im Kino einen guten Film gesehen. I saw a good movie in the movie theater. Ich war letzten Sommer in den Alpen. I was in the Alps last summer. Feel free to pause the video if you want to take a good look at these sentences. Keep in mind that because we're using the dative case with these, the preposition in will translate as in, not to. Now the same principles apply to an. Since we want to say at, not to, we need to use the dative case with them. An dem will contract to am for both masculine and neuter words, while an der and an den remain uncontracted. Again, pause the video if you'd like to take a really good look at these examples. Next, a quick word about indefinite articles and possessive pronouns in the dative case. Words for a, my, your, his, her, our, their, etc. The indefinite articles in the dative case are as follows. Einem for masculine, and notice the M corresponds to the M on dem. Einer for feminine with an R corresponding to der. Einem for neuter. And nothing for the plural. The possessive forms are built off of these. So my in the dative case would be meinem, meiner, meinen, or meinen in the plural. Your would become deinem, deiner, deinem, or deinen, and so on. If you happen to use one of the prepositions we've been discussing, and you want to use an indefinite article or possessive form, feel free. Just be aware that none of those prepositions will take contractions with things other than dem or der. So you'll have to use the raw, original form of the preposition. In other words, you wouldn't want to say zum einen Kaffee, because zum already means to the. Instead, just use the original preposition. Zu einem Kaffee, in meinem Hotel, von deinem Haus, etc. And you'll be fine. Okay, time to review. You always need to use the dative case with von and zu, as well as the other prepositions listed in orange on the bottom right of your screen. You will also need to use the dative case with in or an, but only if your meaning is in or at, not to. Now, Von, zu, in, and an all have contractions that might be options, so you're going to need to watch out for those and use those appropriately, but don't use those when you're using a possessive form or an indefinite article.